Let's work through the settings menu of the Pfaff Creative 4.5 sewing machine. You'll find that where the little picture of the tools are, kind of like a wrench and a screwdriver. So the machine settings, you have kind of some different categories. You have screen settings, you have sound settings, and then of course the question mark. If you're unsure what any of these are, you can always touch that and it will explain what to do here. So back to the machine settings, we have language. You can put your name in here. You can choose for what type of thread is recommended when it comes to embroidery. This is where we'll turn our twin needle function on or off. So if I do turn it on, say at 4.0, and then come back out, you'll notice that the stitches will actually show what it looks like when you have a 4.0 double needle on. So this is nice. Now I will go in and turn that off, or actually let me show you something. If I go to the 2.0, watch the difference in the way this stitches. Isn't that neat? It actually shows you what it would look like with a narrow needle or a wider double needle. I use double needle, twin needle, kind of, they're one and the same, but they do mean the same item. But anything that you do in the settings menu is going to be remembered when you turn the machine off and when you turn it back on. So this is kind of like a global settings area. So for example, if I left the twin needle function on, turn my machine off and come back 2 days later, there's going to be a little pop-up message to remind me that the twin needle setting is on and do I want to turn it off. I will need to manually come back in here, go back to the off setting to physically remove it. The next one is a stitch width safety. Notice right now there is not a check mark in this box, but if you do own a straight stitch throat plate, so it's a plate that has just a single hole instead of the wide zigzag area, it is a great stitch plate for doing more precise straight stitching, working on sheer fabrics, and even free motion quilting. I love it for piecing too. The other thing is sometimes when I do sew with a 1/4 inch foot, you do notice that if you accidentally pick a zigzag, you're going to break your needle. Do you know you can have this foot on, tell the machine not to let you do a zigzag, and when you go to a stitch that you're not supposed to do, you're going to get a little message and notice the stitch did not change in the background. It said you are set for this limitation, and that's another great thing that you could do so you don't break needles. I'll go ahead and turn that back off. We've got the cut jump stitches. For the embroidery side, the thread snips are kind of programmed from time to time to cut the thread at the end of stitches. So if you don't want that to happen, you can actually turn that off. You do have your own timer, so you can kind of keep an idea of how much time it takes to sew a project. Automatic foot lift, that's where you cut the thread and the foot automatically lifts up. You can change that. You can also make it so it doesn't pop up in between when you stop with the needle down. That would be an option. This is also where you turn your feed dogs on or off, or up or down. Most of the time, if you just leave it on auto, it will lower them for, say, embroidery. Lift them back up for sewing. It'll lower it for sewing on buttons. It'll lower it for free motion stitching. So most of the time, if you just leave it auto, the machine knows when to do that. Your auto save current state. This will allow you to stop in the middle of an embroidery design, turn off your machine, and then come back to it the next day, and it will pick up right where you left off. It'll remember your pattern, where you moved it to, and what stitch you were on. Thread tension compensation, kind of a global tension. So if you're always seeming to reduce the tension for maybe the thread you've put on, you can come in here and kind of shift the whole tension setting and make it so you don't have to change it every time you pick a new stitch. You can do it on the sewing and embroidery side of it. For your free motion stitching, you can choose which foot you are doing for embroidery and then also for free motion. This is your foot pressure, so you can come in and reduce the pressure of that foot. Again, this will be remembered for when you go from day to day of sewing. Next menu here, the screen settings, a lock screen, a screensaver, so if you don't touch it, a little pretty picture comes up, and also a calibration here. I'm going to actually show you what this means. So if you're ever touching something on your screen and it doesn't feel like you're actually, it's not working as well, you can calibrate your own screen. And what you need to do is, if you get into this, you'll need to touch each of these little pluses and follow it around the screen here and get it back into position. Now you've calibrated your screen. So if you're ever touching this button and this button is activating, that means your screen, your touch screen is shifted, and you can calibrate it yourself. In the last one, we do have sound settings. So right now when I touch something, you're hearing a click. And if you didn't want it to make that noise, you can turn it off. You could also have, when you touch certain buttons, what kind of sounds are coming up. Warning, little pop-up messages will come up with another sound. And also, would you like it to make a sound when your embroidery is finished? Auto repeat would mean that it will repeat that sound, so you don't ignore it. It will be something that you can set. So again, you can easily go in, set things up the way you sew, and then come back out by touching the check mark at the end.